too is Terry, there in Box, there is a survey or a, what do we call it, survey, evaluation form or whatever. So as always on all these things that we do, hopefully you were able to find it and can download it or have and try to get your folks to fill it out before they take off, because it always is good information and stuff that we need and can use here in Extension, as we know that we always need to evaluate what we do. So tell us how you did. Anyway, okay.
It was printed, Kathy, I printed it off and it was in their packet, so we're good.
Wonderful. That would be great. And if you just can collect them and then you could just send them to me or make a copy and send them to me, that would be greatly appreciated.
I will.
Perfect. Okay, so the last bit that I was going to go through here, if I can advance, is a little bit on some diseases, okay? It's something that we always, things pop up, some things that are in the news, some things that you can go and find the information from. We know when it involves our horses, there's a lot of emotion out there, and some of it, as our new president says, is fake news, you might say. And so I'm going to give you some places that you can go also as you start hearing rumors about diseases and issues, and places that you as Extension folks can go to get the right information. You can always contact me. And when things start going crazy about some certain issues, I do try to put stuff on our UNL Horse Facebook page through the social media. That's the main social media venue I use. I'm not a very good on Twitter. But try to get some of the stuff out there. So some of this is going to be pretty basic for those of you that are involved with the horses, but hopefully I'll bring up some things and show you some things and ways you can get some good information. But if you're ever in doubt, always go to AAP. AAP is the American Association of Equine Practitioners. You'll see a lot of stuff. That's who we go to for the basic information, who the real guidelines are and what's really going on. So they kind of set the gold standard for some of the vaccinations and healthcare for our horses. And I've got on here kind of what they consider or what they recommend as their core vaccine of sleeping sickness, West Nile, tetanus, and rabies. And I think it's kind of interesting, as we all know, that probably 20 years ago West Nile was not on there, and now it most certainly is. And here on this link, I do take you to AAP's site, and you don't have to be a veterinarian to go in and get in here. There is a place, to join and stuff like that about being a member, but you can go over to this portion here for horse owners, okay, and get in here and find out a lot of good stuff. If you really look here on horse health, go to that one. There are different articles on horse health. Guidelines also is another spot that disaster preparedness, equine welfare. This is the one that kind of is the highlight of the stuff that I'm going to talk about. And there's a lot of really fact-based information that they base all their stuff on here about different things with different disease recommendations. And so that to me is the gold standard that really I go back to and go back to and get some of the, if I have some questions, if I don't have a veterinarian to call on, I'll go to there because it's a pretty trustworthy thing. So just a little bit of really brief stuff on a few of the main core things, and rabies is very much a standard one that everybody should vaccinate for on your routine core vaccinations. And, we got the picture up there of the nail in the foot. I believe the horse with the bad eyes maybe is one that's suffering from tetanus. It's a pretty gruesome picture if you ask me. It should be a routine vaccine. It's most commonly in a variety, in a combination for many of the vaccines that you give them. It's a very good vaccine, and the scary part is that if you don't, about 80% of effective horses, if they get tetanus, you're going to lose them. So there's really no reason not to vaccinate for them. Sleeping sickness, it's one of their core vaccines. Here in Nebraska, we really look to make sure that we vaccinate against the two strains of the Eastern Western, EEE and BEE, okay? They're the most common, and if you move horses to the southern regions, then the Venezuelan strain is one that more commonly, sometimes they do go to tracking, they do go to making sure that your horses have been vaccinated for. I know sometimes when my husband has sent horses south for different clients to be bred, they have stopped and checked if they are vaccinated for the Venezuelan strain. But again, as far as what you're going to find, Every year there are some horses that pop up with sleeping sickness, so it's, to me, West Nile is along this category now, that although you don't hear a lot of horses vaccinated for it, it's because we do a good job of vaccinating them. It doesn't mean that it's gone. And important to note that here 20 to 50% of the horses infected with the Western strain, you might lose them, but the EEE strain, the Eastern strain, pretty high percentage of those you would lose if you vaccinate for them. Again, it's a really good vaccine. It's usually in combination with many of your others, so there's no reason not to vaccinate for them, okay? Many of us around here now have been involved and know kind of the history of West Nile and how it's come on. Actually, some of my students just think, oh yeah, it's something we always do. But I still remember when this thing first came on back here in around 2002, Nebraska was one of the hot spots for West Nile, and now we're pretty much routine that it is one of our core vaccines and AAP recommends it. But it's important to know, although it's still around, okay, I think we have fewer cases in our horses, in part because we've done a better job of vaccinating them, and also they've developed some of those antibodies over the year because it's so prevalent. We know it doesn't go away because every year we do have human cases here in the state, and I did find these numbers from 16. We had 95 human cases, and actually 5 horses in the state that were actually diagnosed with West Nile. Humans, it can be very serious, okay? Elderly people are very notorious for developing West Nile, and many of them do not survive it. So it's not something to take lightly. Unfortunately for us people, there's no vaccine for it, but we do have a good vaccine for your horses. This, if you guys want to get some of the latest information on it, okay, our Nebraska Department of Health, Department of Ag has some good resources that they do track a lot of the things. And so this one is from the Health and Human Services, and you can look at the different cases. This is, I believe, human cases, okay, but you can also go in and find those for actual horses on some more places, and so you can find out the actual facts, okay, about what's going on with that particular disease and some of the others, okay. Rabies. I would say when I first came here, it was not very common to vaccinate for rabies, okay? And over the years, we've gotten not a ton of rabies cases, but we have had cases of rabid horses here in Nebraska and in the state. And so now in different pockets of the country, they always had vaccinate for rabies. Again, it's a very effective vaccine. It's a very inexpensive vaccine. So it should be one of your core vaccines and something that you do routinely vaccinate for. In 16, okay, there were, and I'll show you, I found a very interesting 10-year report on this, but in 16, there were 19 positive cases of rabies, but none of those were horses. In 2011, okay, we did have 4 positive horses in the state for rabies, so it's not that common, but it can be very serious if you do end up with it. So it's lethal, there's really no treatment, and those types of things. This is another one that takes you and you can track the cases. This will track you by county. Here you can check on the year and you can track it a little bit further, break it down. I found, let me get back to it, this 10-year report that I found really interesting because it doesn't do just horses, but it does a variety, pretty much all cases of rabies over the past 10 years. And this was put up, or the summary starts in 2005, so it goes back 10 years from there. So I thought this was kind of interesting just to look at and to understand that it is prevalent. So this is just in Nebraska, okay? So these are the rabid species broken down by species. You know, we hear the bats, and I know we have places, I know Memorial Stadium has bats, people get concerned about bats. And so there is a fair number of, this was just in 2015, the number of cases in bats that were found. Here we've got horses, there were only 6 that were tested, and there were no positive cases. That was just in 2005, okay? This shows you across the state, only in 2005, of where the different cases were, probably because of just the population factor or whatever. Most of the bats were in, not going to say Omaha, they're in the Douglas County region and kind of spread out. You can see between felines, skunks are in the yellow, different things across the state. Okay, so here's the 10-year report, okay, that I thought was kind of interesting. And so over the 10 years, you can see that there was just under 6,000 bats tested, and 109 were found to be positive. We had 115 horses tested, meaning that there was a suspicion or they had a reason to test them, and there were 16 that were positive, and that was from in that 10-year time span. And so the second, you know, dogs and cats were the second largest ones that were tested, but it's interesting, skunks were the really the highest that were actually found to be positive. Okay, so I just thought these were some interesting numbers. This will tell you a lot more about the disease, and I'm not going to go into all of that. This is kind of split up per year. Thought that there was another map in here that, and maybe not. But anyway, oh yeah, here we go. This was, oh yeah, this is just bats. So this breaks it down by species. And so it's just some information on rabies and to take it fairly seriously. And most of us do really recommend that you do. And AAP now has it as one of the core vaccines. We're 20 years ago, and I can't tell you when they put it in, but it hasn't always been one of their core vaccines. Okay, so then they have a group of diseases that they consider the risk-based vaccinations. And I have rhino flu and strangles on here. That is not all of them. Okay, there's more of them, but these are probably the most common ones that we might see, that we might run into here in our state. So it's a much broader list, and you can go to that AAP site and look and find their big list of risk-based ones, okay? A lot of these is going to vary between the horse, where you have them, exposure, age, and those different kinds of things. Okay, so the biggest one of concern with a lot of horsemen anymore is rhino, the EHV, okay? Equine rhino arteritis. There's mainly one strain that really is the most concerning, and that's going to be the EHV1, the neurological strain. And many of you probably remember last year at Fauner Park, they did have some positive horses during the race meet and did have to be quarantined for a period of time. We've had a few other scares, okay, in the state, but that was the first one that there were actually physically positive horses. And I know at least one was put down. There might have been more, but there were 3 positive horses, and I can't remember if the other 2 had to be put down or not, okay? But, so, all rhino is not the neurological form, okay? You can see on here, you know, a lot of them are exposed to it, different kind of facilities, because it is very much spread by inhalation and contact to contact with them. We talk a lot about the most common strains are going to be the EHV1 and the EHV4. The EHV4 is a respiratory form. That all of your adult horses, we kind of routinely vaccinate them for that. They mainly are going to get a cough, a nasal discharge, be sick, those different kinds of things, okay? EHV1, there's actually a couple different forms of the EHV1 in our brood mares. We need to vaccinate those mares for the abortive form, and we always say at the 5th, 7th, and 9th month of gestation. For the more concerning one is going to be this neurological form of the disease that is the one that has caused the issues, and really we can help protect them, but you can't 100% vaccinate them for it, okay? So they call it equine herpes virus myeloencephalopathy. I believe I pronounced that fairly right, EHM, okay? So it is a form of EHV1, and it is a neurological disease, and these are all the different kinds of things that a horse might succumb and have. Fever, poor coordination, they drip their urine, they're very weak. You can see the images of those horses there that are in a really very difficult state, okay? Very common. There is a good potential that you'll lose them. Not all of them you'll lose. Some can go through this, and you can support them enough that they can get through it. It was interesting. When we were on lunch break, I just read a thing that came out of the AEP meetings, and there's some suggestions of some different things with heparin that maybe can help prevent it. So that's something that's really just very much on the forefront. This is way more technical than what I understand, because I'm not a veterinarian or an epidemiologist, but there are some different terminology and different strains or types. We've got a non-neuropathogenic and a neuropathogenic form, okay? The bottom line is this is less likely to cause a neurological type disease, okay? but it could. The other is more likely to cause a neurological disease. So just because your horse comes down with the HB1, okay, the rest, that form of rhino does not mean that it's going to get the neurological issues, okay? So some do and some don't, and there's various reasons why they suspect some do and some don't, but so it's kind of a difficult deal to be around. Prevention, the vaccines that we're going to use are not going to specifically prevent the neurological form, but you're still going to vaccinate your horses with that because it will avoid some of the other types of things, okay? It can reduce the shedding, so potentially could reduce some of the spreading of it. Typically, though, we'll vaccinate our horses for rhino once to twice a year. Those that are in high traffic areas, because it's so easily spread by inhalation, they now kind of suggest at least twice a year. Some good biosecurity and types of things, just like having horses around and avoiding the nose-to-nose contact. Many of your show facilities now will go and start to disinfect their facilities. I know when we go to the event center, Lancaster Event Center to show, they will show that they have notices that they've gone through and disinfected the stalls because they now have horses coming from all over the country. Okay, racetracks are also notorious. They suspect part of the thing of how the stuff ended up at Fauner Park was horses at, I don't remember the exact track, but a previous track, place had been under quarantine, they released it, they moved. They're suspected that some of that might have been transmitted that way. Racetracks are kind of notorious, and there's probably more cases that have been involved in racetracks because you have such a high concentration of horses and ones that are coming and going. Okay, so it can be pretty big issues with some of those kinds of facilities. Okay, so here's a little bit, that we did actually finally have it, not a good thing, here in Nebraska in 2016. Because it's something that is popping up, I got a notice from Texas that I get on that there were positive cases just very recently in Texas. And so if you're going to start transporting horses around, it's probably good to double check that facility to see if they're requiring any kind of health documentation of hauling horses around, because different facilities are going to get tighter on some of those types of things because of the more prevalence of the disease and the problems with it. A lot of this started back, and we had some scares of this back in 2011 when there was kind of one of the first more documented or known kind of confirmations of kind of a larger number of horses with the EHV1 was some horses that came from a cutting competition in Utah. And after that event, before this was realized what the disease was or what the issues were, those horses spread around of numerous states, and actually there were some that did come into Nebraska. We had 7 horses that were exposed, but none of the horses here in the state became sick. And I can remember people just went crazy, okay? Crazy with concern, you have to cancel this, you can't do this because these horses were maybe here. And it was like, people calm down because it's a respiratory thing, it's only gonna be out there for short periods of time and those types of things. And so this one was kind of a concern, and they did go ahead and quarantine a variety of horses and locations and things like that. So the important thing to understand and realize about some of these things is that, a lot of stuff gets thrown out there, and social media is really quite wild and rampant over some of these things. And so just be smart about the kinds of information that you get and make sure that you go to some dependable sources to find out what the true story is. Back when that deal happened, this is when I was still running the 4-H program, and that happened like in April. And they were telling us by June, the people were really scared to have horses at some of these county fair facilities. And those events weren't going to be for 2 or 3 months later. So it's like, relax, people. So get the right information, and that, there's a variety of different things out there. Our Nebraska Department of Ag does put good information out there, and you can go straight to their site. This is some stuff that they had up back in April when the things broke from Fauner Park. Because it is a communicable, reportable type of disease, it was under quarantine, so they were very much involved. And so to get the good information, and we also try to send it out, because I sent out a press release that was very much mimicked what came from the state vet's office. Okay, and there is a lot of good fact sheets and stuff that they have to give you good information on the EHV1, and make sure you're getting the right information and just not a lot of hearsay. Okay, vesicular stomatitis is another one that does surface around here every so often, more for you folks out in the western part of the state, and it does tend to occur more in the latter parts of the summer. Okay, it is not something that typically your horses are going to succumb to, and it is very highly transmittable or found in cattle. Typically, it's a disease you can see affects horses, donkeys, mules, cattle, swine, those different kinds of animals. I've got a cattle picture, I've got a horse picture, and classically it involves different lesions and sores within their mouth, and so they get sick, they go off feed, and those types of things. And it is a reportable disease that they do quarantine from time to time, because the biggest effect is appears to be similar to foot and mouth, but it's not. Okay, and so they do get involved. The issue with vesicular stomatitis is it takes animals off feed, those types of things, and they will quarantine horses, they will quarantine facilities, they will quarantine and limit the transport of horses across state lines, or livestock, any animals across state lines. In the summertime, when sometimes this breaks, you will hear of different facilities. It always seems that it comes from Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, Colorado, up kind of that kind of corridor of places. Scotts Bluff, out in those areas is where you tend to see more of it. And here's this is just also from our site, and somewhere you can find a map of it as far as more information on the vesicular stomatitis. Okay. I could not find the numbers from 15 of all of the states. I know it did show that we had 13 cases in 15 in Nebraska. I didn't find the numbers for 16. This 586, those are, you can see right at nearly 500 in Colorado, none in Nebraska, Texas, Arizona. At times we have had, here was one back in 2005. So we have had cases of it every so often. Okay, this is one that I really want to share with you guys and encourage you to go to. Okay, this is a very, very good site. You can also like it on Facebook, that you can get some of the very best and probably most accurate information about equine diseases and what they're dealing with. If you want to make sure this is a good thing, then look at the sponsors, okay, and see who is pushing this thing. It's AAP, it's the veterinarians, and most of your major associations. So then that tells me, okay, this is the real deal. I'm going to be confident and comfortable with the information that's coming down here by who the people are that's providing the information for it, okay? So this can tell you a little bit about what this group is, okay? And then you can go in here and find, I have gone over here and get email alerts from them because they are very valuable. You can join them on Facebook or Twitter, okay? Here's if you click on disease outbreak alerts. This is across the country, so you can see here's some herpes virus very recently in Nevada. You can come in here and select your state, okay? So we can come in here and select Nebraska and search Nebraska to see what we've had. And in 16, there was some stuff out in Garden County for a horse last July. Here's the stuff related to Fauner Park, because this is when it was breaking and all those different types of things. And this is talking about how the quarantine had been lifted. Here's some stuff on vesicular stomatitis. So you can search your particular state and find out, what's really going on. And you'll hear, oh, I heard they've got this, and I heard they got this. Well, this will give you, because if this has been reported by the veterinarians, then it's going to show up on here, okay? This one gives you a lot of really good information if you want to find out information on pretty much any disease that there is, okay? EPM, equine protozoal myelitis, okay? It might take you to here, and you don't have to be a member. Again, you can go over here to horse owners and find a lot of the stuff there, okay? Back to this. Oops. So EVA, different kinds of things. Here's some information that they will post to you about vaccination stuff, biosecurity recommendations, and also if you're trying to teach some other folks, there's a lot of nice short videos that you can go and view about different things for stalls and facilities and things such as that to kind of help. And even maybe if you've got people that are going to be running an event, if you're trying to work with a group of kids or youth to teach them about that stuff, you know, what better way to do that? State vet offices, it will give you a link. You can come in here and click on Nebraska, and if you don't know the contact information for our folks in Nebraska, okay, it's going to be pop up and be right there. Or if you want to find out stuff about Nevada, because sometimes if you're transporting horses out of state and you want to know if your veterinarian isn't around or you want to know what you have to do, then that's one place that you can go to find some of that information. Okay. So to finish up, just one last slide. This is one that actually Dr. Black showed us the last time he did this, and I just kind of stole it from him if it pops up. Yeah, this one's kind of interesting. It's just something if you want to look at as far as different kinds of diseases and stuff across the country, and what some of these, you know, where things are and what's going on. So if we click, we can blow it up. Click on Nebraska here. I think it'll show up. Working very well. Oh, it's spinning. Okay, so here, April of 16, that probably was Fawner Park. It's showing that this is the HV1, and they had that issue here. If you look at the date, April of 16, then that was Fawner Park. And someone out here, there's two of them out here. He's being a little slow. This is a 16 West Nile. Okay, so there was a case of West Nile. Probably we could find out a little bit more if we clicked on more where it was and that. So just something else, another resource that you can go to kind of figure out and see, you know, what's happening, what's going on. So with that, I won't entertain any questions that you guys might have, and that's just, I would really encourage to go to the site that I just showed you, because I think it's one that does give you really good information, and one that I learned about not that long ago, but with who's in charge of it and running it, it's going to be one of your best resources for a lot of health information. So, questions from you guys or anything? Or out west?
Why isn't rhino one of the core vaccines?
With the way they defined core vaccines, but as far as the list of actually, and I rechecked that this morning because it didn't make a lot of sense to me, but I can't tell you exactly why.
What about flu or influenza?
No, because some of those are because of the a little bit on the way that they're transmitted, and that instead of being flu or influenza have never been a core vaccine. It's something that we always do. But I have to go back in and read at their site to tell you how they define and how they pick which ones are core vaccines, okay, or core diseases. I kind of was a little bit surprised because it seemed like a few of those used to be, but they're not. Yeah.
A lot of people get flu twice a year or 3 times a year.
Yeah. I mean, and even some of your veterinarians will suggest for flu and rhino that you do it when you're traveling them and being a lot of high contact, like going to a lot of shows, competitions, and stuff like that, that you really do it about every 2 months. Some of them have changed some of their rules, some of their thoughts on some of that, thinking that maybe we over-vaccinate. So I'd really visit with your veterinarian as far as what their recommendations are, because they go through different schools of thoughts on some of that, okay?
Do you think horses build up immunity to West Nile?
I think so, and I think that's in part why we don't see as much of it, is combination of, you know, that we do a better job of vaccinating them and that type of stuff. And the veterinarians will say, you know, that is a part of it also. Yeah. Yeah, it was really, really bad when it hit, you know, in 2000, 2011, 10, 11, and we lost a lot of horses here for it. And then there was a lot of miscommunication about the vaccine. The vaccine was fine. It just wasn't given at the right time and given at the right, because it was an initial vaccine, you had to give it at 2 doses to get them started. And if it wasn't given at the right intervals, and those types of things. There are, here in Nebraska, because of the way we have our winter and our mosquito season, they still do recommend that we can get by with it once a year, but we don't do it until April or May. If you go down south in mosquito country, okay, they still will vaccinate many of those twice a year, like Florida and some of those places where it's more prevalent, just because of the nature of mosquitoes. So, but I know last year, yeah, go ahead.
Have you had experience with giving a moon blind horse vaccinations? That was a question here. Because it affects the immune system and it can cause the blindness to get worse, is the comment. Have you ever heard that?
No, but again, I'm not a veterinarian. I'm not an epidemiologist. So I would have to go and research that one, to a higher level, because, yeah.
And one comment from me, our vet told us not to give our West Nile shot and our sleeping sickness shots in the same shot, to get 2 separate ones. He felt it would reduce the effectiveness.
Yes, and I've heard that also, that it needs to be separate shots. There's also some of those that they don't want to give at the same time, okay? Give them about 2 weeks or 10 days different. So, yeah.
Yes.
Yes. I've heard some of those same kinds of things. Yep. Anything else? My bottom line is find the right information when things start happening, or contact us here, because I do try to find, the real world word about what's going on, because you will start hearing things and the rumor will run rampant. And we do try to put out the base. On our e-extension month, we have a lot of good base information. And so when things start going crazy in any one of our states, we try to get the right information out to calm people's panic attack down.
So a vet's recommending rabies?
Yes. I would definitely vaccinate for rabies now. It's a very inexpensive vaccine. And unfortunately, if your horse gets it, he's going to die. So there's really not a good reason not to.
What do you call inexpensive? $10?
It's something like that. I believe in, in dogs, it's something that has to be done by your veterinarian, because they have to report it for your rabies tags. I can't tell you if you have to get it from your veterinarian or not. I think for rabies, you have to get it from your veterinarian. You don't, rabies tag your horses like you do your dogs. But I believe you have to, I believe it's got to be purchased through a veterinarian, but I can't tell you for that. Your veterinarian's going to tell you. And you can, call it up and look, but.
For possums wasn't on that list of those that get rabies.
For rabies, no. EPM is possums, yeah, but that's a whole different ball of wax.
I've got one at home in the cage right now. I need to.
Yeah.
No self-respecting rabid animal would bite a possum.
Yeah. I mean, it doesn't mean that they won't, but they're just not on a list of the most likely ones, the biggies. That's the bottom line. Yeah. Yeah. Anything else? Okay.